My guest today is the animator genius Toby Cochran and his Oscar qualifying animated short film, LUKI and the Lights. Now, LUKI and the Lights shares a charming and touching story of a robot named LUKI who is slowly starting to malfunction. This poignant animated short was made to raise awareness of ALS as well as to create a platform for children to understand what the disease is. Now, LUKI and the Lights is inspired by the true story of Sasha Groen and her husband, Anjo Schneiders, who was diagnosed with ALS. To date, the film has taken home 20 awards. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome writer, director, editor Toby Cochran and his Oscar-qualified animated short film, LUKI and the Lights, to the show. Welcome, Toby.
Hello, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I have to start off and say, what an incredibly endearing animated short film you have created. Now, I understand that this was inspired by a true story. How did that come to be?
Yeah, it was first started by Sasha and Anjo. Anjo was diagnosed with ALS about 6.5 years ago. And when he was first diagnosed, they had no idea how to explain it to their children at the time. They had two little ones under the age of 10. And Sasha, being an illustrator and teacher by trade, started drawing this robot with giant light bulbs in the joints. I actually have the very first prototype on my wall here. So this was the very first version, if you will. So you can see there was giant light bulbs in kind of all areas of the character. And this visually allowed their children to kind of fill in the light bulbs on a piece of paper and kind of follow along with the diagnosis of Anjo. Is like his wrist would go out, they could fill in the light bulb. The elbow would go out, they could fill it in, and so on and so forth. From there, she was blogging, and it kind of became this unofficial mascot in the Netherlands. And eventually somebody was like, hey, you need to make this an animated short film. And eventually they found my company, and their mission just happened to align with my company's mission to tell stories like this. And we kind of set off to help them bring this character to life, the story to life, and build this beautiful world. And that was about 3 years ago now.
Wow. I mean, my doctorate degree is in brain nutrition, so I know what ALS is.
Yeah,
But choosing robots to show how ALS affects the body was an absolute brilliant move. And it's an excellent teaching tool. And
absolutely.
and you show this in this incredible short film because you pinpointed 3 points in LUKI when it comes to how ALS affects a person. You had the simple loss of control in the hand, the leg, and
Mhm.
eventually the voice, and the latter being a very heartbreaking moment in the film. But of course, a lot of people don't realize too that eventually, for many, it's going to affect breathing as well as digestion, which are affected as the disease progresses. When you started working on the animation, because first of all, how did you decide to choose between, I guess you call it 2D animation versus 3D animation? Because this film is 3D animation, correct?
That's correct.
So how did you decide which way you wanted to go to tell the story?
Well, I knew that we wanted. I mean, my company, Big Ren, focuses on 3D animation, more higher end stuff that we do with clients and things of that nature. So I knew that we wanted to take advantage of the lighting, specifically with the light bulbs and things like that. I just knew that the lighting would be a crucial character. The performance as well. I wanted to make sure that we could have our animators have as much kind of fidelity and control over the character for the sensitive nature of what we would be animating, much of which, like you shared at the very end of the film, has never really been done with the main character in animation on screen. Usually, at least in Western films, they'll cut away from characters that are sick or dying and things like that and not show stuff on screen. So for those moments, we wanted as much control as possible. And what helped us as well is we made the film with Unreal Engine, which was a new kind of pipeline for us at Big Grin. Primarily, we used Maya and things like that. But with Unreal Engine, we could do everything inside the game engine and see the lighting and everything real time as well.
Wow. I mean, when this film, when I was watching the film and when it first started, I was blown away by the animation.
Thank you.
I mean, it is something to absolutely just sit there and stare at because you can pick out all of the 3D animations that everybody know that they know and love, but then there's this film. And it stands out above anything that I've ever seen for
Mm.
multiple reasons because there's so much detail. I mean, if you were to look at the way Monster Inc. was shot,
Hmm.
and everybody was going crazy about even the fur, you could see the fur moving in all of the action scenes. I'm like, yeah, but if you look at it, it it doesn't compare to Luki and the Lights because Luki is on a whole nother level.
I appreciate that. That's a very big compliment. I really enjoy Monsters Inc. myself. The kind of art and the look of the film was very much inspired by this kind of handcrafted, hand quality feel that I wanted to go for. So my production designer Marie Thorhag and I wanted to kind of ground everything in a storybook type of feel, illustration, to make it a little bit easier to digest visually for audiences. And then for me, I'm just a fan of pushing the colors and not having things super oversaturated where a lot of like quote unquote kids animation is just it's like high fructose corn syrup for your eyeballs, and I personally hate that. So we wanted to go with a different kind of look and style where everything is hand painted in there. It's a 90-10 split with 90% being hand painted textures and 10% being procedural based materials. So like the glass would look like glass, or the shine on the metal would feel like a metal, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and see, and I love the fact that you brought up that this film has a storybook look, and it does, because when you looked at let's say maybe it was the brick path, maybe it was the trees and the bushes, and even if you took a still shot of any scene, you could see it on the page of a children's book,
That was the
and
goal.
and kids would immediately relate to it. And the other thing was too, when you did the light bulbs, that has to be the most difficult thing in the world is to create the look of glass.
Yeah, and turns out at the time with the version of Unreal we were using, creating lights in glass was really difficult. Uh, like we didn't know, having a character with glass on glass, covering a glass light bulb on the chest was going to essentially kind of blow up the computer and the rendering and stuff like that. So we had thank God for my technical supervisors, but we had so many bugs to fix to make sure that the glass was working appropriately. We eventually, the team, we wrote our own kind of code, if you will, called blueprints to make sure that the filaments inside the light bulbs would actually glow, because the way we did it before, I'm getting nerdy here, but the way we did it before was we would cheat the light bulbs glow by putting a light inside there and just kind of turning it up or down and stuff like that. But when they rewrote it, the filament inside would actually emit light, and then that would help refract and glow and bounce around with the light bulb and stuff like that. But we needed to control how much it was refracting in there and then outside as well. And that was really important because of the very ending, with Luki and his chest light. So we needed that kind of control as well, just to make sure that moment was hitting the right chords.
I mean, Every minute detail of the animation is fantastic. I mean, I would pause the film or go back and look at other scenes again, and my eyes were just looking at everything in every frame because it just takes your breath away on how incredible this 3D animation is. Now, with the process that you used to create, was there a bit of any AI involved? Because if you're creating a light bulb and then you're wanting to get the right glow, was that something that you had to create by hand?
Yeah, the team did everything by hand. There was no AI involved in this film. The maybe if we were to do it again now, we would write some different code that AI could help speed things up in terms of the coding side of stuff. But even then, I'm not even sure like how we would kind of go about that. But again, everything for us and what I want to kind of work on is coming from a human's hand, human intention, and then like I was sharing, a lot of this was inspired by Anyo, where he was this man of many talents and just kind of this DIY kind of guy, where he built all the furniture, nearly all the furniture in his home. So like his kitchen table, the bookshelf, the racks, like redoing the bathroom, all this kind of stuff. And the other big component that I learned about him was he loved Dungeons and Dragons and painting, the little figurines and making sure that they were ready for the game and stuff like that with his friends. And once I learned that, that kind of influenced Luki's character of him being, painting and into crafting things with his hands. And that, again, led to making sure everything had that handcrafted feel.
Oh, so that's why he was like he was painting the soccer ball.
Yeah, exactly. So that moment when he was painting in his sketchbook, once his legs were completely out, but he still had some function of a hand, he had rigged up this kind of contraption to his paintbrush and was still painting, right? And that was directly influenced by Anyo and other people I had researched with ALS, where they, no matter what was kind of happening to their body, they were finding ways to still express their creativity. And Anyo had this device that was set up to his forearm where he could still paint. And then his kids, we've got a video of him and his kids painting at the dinner table and just having fun together. So I was like, okay, that idea has to find its way into the film because it's also important to reflect Luki's mindset and also anybody who's dealing with this disease, that they're still trying to make the most out of it no matter what.
Yeah, and the thing that what I really appreciated was when you started the film and you didn't rush Luki's problem. You you'd highlight it here. You would give it's almost like giving us a little hint. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, something's wrong, and but at first he's not really taking it serious. It's just like what a human would do. They're like, oh, maybe I just got a little bit of numbness. It'll go away, and then
Absolutely.
just go about my business. And you showed that with Luki. Now, the movements that you created when Luki's ALS started to appear again was spot on to human movements. You showed the lack of strength to pick up an object,
Mm-hmm.
the dragging of the hand or the limb, uh, and then the cracking, and then the losing of the voice. How are you able to mimic the exact human movements to apply to Luki's character?
Yeah, a lot of that was based on my actors, aka my animators, and having my two amazing animation supervisors. That was all informed by asking Anyo a lot of questions of what was it like, before you had to finally accept going into a wheelchair and things like that, and finding out he was very stubborn to, and rightfully so, trying to extend that time period before he had to go into a wheelchair because he knew that there was no going back after that. But he was always like walking around the house or outside and finding himself falling down and just being kind of stubborn, and his wife going, I think it's time. And he's like, no, he's like, I can still make it a couple of days. So I wanted to try and reflect little moments of that in there as well. And then from our research, like you just shared, a lot of people, and this disease goes misdiagnosed for quite some time too, where people might think, oh, it's arthritis, or it's some other thing going on, and just kind of kicking the can down the road. And then even with testing at the doctor's office, it can take some time, and it's pretty intrusive, testing, that we just wanted to reflect that. And so everything that was in the film, my animators would act out. And then if they were too shy to act out, I would act out myself. And then we would use that as reference video for the animators to have. And one other thing to add to that is something that we did that was really fun and kind of unique was we animated the film on twos. So typically animated films, 24 frames per second. We did things on twos, meaning there was 12 frames per second for the 24. So if you've seen, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that was like the most recent film that has kind of like accelerated this look and feel of like animating on twos, and recent Ninja Turtles film. But we decided to do that because I wanted to play the animation on twos as one, this kind of stop motion feel, to go with the handcrafted look of everything. But two, the more LUKI progresses with the diagnosis of the disease, we actually go from twos to threes to fours. So the more he starts to get worse, the more he stutters with the actual animation. That way the animation complements the story points of what we were trying to get across.
Wow, it was seamless.
Thank you.
And I was kind of wondering. So you didn't have to dress anybody up in a green screen suit and put a bunch of electrodes all over them to create the movements, and then put it into some machine and make a 3D animation.
No, this was all done again, hand keyed animation on everything. So we could have maybe put somebody in a suit like that, but because of kind of the style and us pushing the cartooniness as well, just like when LUKI first wakes up and we're introduced to him and him getting out of bed and stretching, we play into him being that robot and twisting around and stretching his arms out and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I love that, and I loved the big character.
Yes, Theo.
Yeah, you left no stone unturned in this film when it came to the creation of the animation, because it's not just the characters that blow you away, it's the background. I mean, there's, your eyes cannot absorb all of the details that you and your team put into this, because it is an animated masterpiece if I ever saw one.
Thank you. That's a big compliment. I feel very confident that we're very very much a scrappy indie animation company, but I feel very confident in a sense that we're punching way above our pay grade with some of the bigger studios in that regard, and that's just due to the incredible team that we had, and also just the love and the craft that we're kind of pouring into it. The big guy, the big yellow guy, Theo. I don't know if you know this. His voice is by Anyo, so we were able to kind of encapsulate Anyo forever inside of Theo.
That is cool. And I even love the way you aged some of the metal parts of the characters. Not necessarily her, but with Theo and of course LUKI. And it just made it so real. It's like when you're watching it on screen, you feel like you could just reach out and touch the characters, because you made them so real, and because you went with this design of like a storybook type design. I literally had, when I started watching it the first time, I'm like, okay, I know this is 3D animation, but did they incorporate another form of animation with it? Because if you're not if you're not studying it with a magnifying glass, it's almost like you put 3D and 2D together,
Yeah.
but it works.
Yeah, that was the goal. We wanted to try. There was, we wanted to do that from a kind of a practical financial standpoint of just knowing our limitations with the budget, and then also I just love this kind of hand painted feel, and it's really easy. Like once we decided to go with Unreal Engine, it's really easy to have things look like a video game. Very realistic, very kind of flat, and different things like that. So it was really important for us to try and push as far away from that as possible, and then really surprise people and be like, "Oh, this is in 3D. You did this in Unreal? Like, how the heck did you do that?" And when I hear that from people, I'm like, "Okay, we did our job." There's like, yeah, when you go back and rewatch it, there's little details to what you've caught, and I really appreciate that. Like even when Luki's at his desk in his office, we have scuff marks where the desk has been worn down from his, where his forearms would be lying on the table and stuff like that, or where he's kind of rotating around the desk. So there's like even little story moments and thoughts and ideas that we made sure to put in there of little, scuffs and paints and stuff like that in there. And it's across the board.
It's like I get sent film pitches all the time from distributors or studios, and when an animated film comes by, they all look the same. They have this, and you know what I'm talking about. They
Yeah.
have this where the characters have this round, smooth look to them,
Yeah.
and sometimes it looks okay, but then sometimes it just kind of looks cheap, or they just didn't take it to the next level. Lukey and the Lights is on a level that I don't think anybody's ever touched, including some of the large studios. And they should be knocking on your door for new animation because I mean, literally, and I mean this honestly and sincerely. I was blown away just by the look,
Thank you.
the movement of the characters, from slow movements to fast movements, and even to the minute details of what is in the background, like you just said of Luki's desk. All of that stuff mattered, and it keeps the look from looking flat
Hmm.
because there's so much to look at. But on top of all of this incredible animation, and see, that was the thing I loved about like Theo. There's these sharp edges to his design. It's kind of like if you look at his face and the top of his head, and you see that section that wraps around. There's this sharp edge there, and I'm like, if any other studio did that, they would have rounded this stuff off, and it would have looked smooth, um, almost how would you call it? Almost pillow like,
Yeah.
and I get tired of that look. But you've got these sharp edges. You got this little tiny pieces of surface rust, and all of these things just flow together in their movement. But then on top of that, who in the world did that wonderful music score?
That, oh my gosh, I'm very lucky to have the musicians that we had on here. I actually met my composer Charlie McCarran on Clubhouse during the pandemic, and we had just connected really well. And then fast forward like a year and a half, when I was looking for somebody, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Charlie. And Charlie, with his orchestration buddy Marty Bergerman, those two combined are just this magic formula, and just pulled on all the right heartstrings that we needed. And because this film has no dialogue, the music very much becomes another component of the story, but also a character, making sure that we can tell the story with the music in moments where we needed people to feel and connect with Luki and his friends and things like that.
So does that mean you had to complete the whole film before the music was added?
So the way we worked with Charlie and Marty was we would do storyboards and the animatics, and we got the animatic like 80 to 90% of the way done, and then I would send that over to Charlie, and then he would start composing some ideas. He would kind of kick that back over to me. He's like, "Hey, what do you think of this and this?" And we kind of work out some areas, and then at a certain point we need to lock the film, and then they will put the score to that film. We had locked almost all of the animation to that point, and there was a couple shots that were in progress, but typically once you get to that point you don't want to change anything. And I know, like, bigger studios and certain films and stuff like that, they have the budget to go back and change that. But for us, we're like, okay, we're going in and we're recording all of the music. We had a really small live orchestra that we worked with this great group of musicians and things like that. So it's like, whatever we get from this recording today, we can't change anything with the story. We can't change any of the shots or anything like that. So we just got to keep it as is. And it was beautiful. And they had a friend come in who she was like the main teacher. We worked with these amazing students they're incredible at their craft. But the instructor, she plays the harp. So she brought in this like 8-foot tall harp into the recording session, and we were able to kind of pick up a couple tones and accent the melodies and things like that towards the end of the film with it. It like having that harp in there just took it to another level too.
Yeah, it reminds me of, it's like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote and Tom and Jerry, where there's no dialogue. It's the music that is setting the tone, and part of the music's kind of it's almost like the music is creating a dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
where our senses are watching everything. We know what's going on, but sometimes we don't understand or think that that music is playing into guiding us through the story. And that's what this film did. But I have to ask, because how long did it take you to realize that once you got the characters exactly like you wanted them, was there a eureka moment?
There were a couple eureka moments. When we started, so this was the original design of Luki, and you can see like the face kind of stayed the most similar as we modified the rest of the body. But Marie and I think we did like 42 designs in about 2.5 weeks working with Sasha, because this character her and Anya had been living with for about a couple of years, so it was like their third child. So for them to be like, okay, who are these artists? Like, what are they doing? Like, they're changing my baby, that sort of thing. But we're like, no, we're making these modifications to help enhance the character, the performance, and the storytelling aspects. Because if the character raises his arm up for anything and he's got this giant light bulb in the way, it's going to hit this other light bulb on the head. So we needed to think about things like that. So once we locked Luki in, that helped kind of, that eureka moment of like locking in the rest of the characters and how the robots in the world would look. What was some others? The fact that we played kind of this homage to the Netherlands, and there being beautiful tulip fields and a lot of windmills. So I was like, well, where would Luki live? I was like, well, why not live in a giant, awesome windmill house? So that was a little homage to them as well. And then that kind of, again, that storybook craft and feel of kind of the mix of the juxtaposition of like the wood handcrafted feel of their world mixed with their metals and things that would be normally metal in our world, like a spoon or silverware, would be wooden in their world, that sort of thing. So that kind
Oh,
of, yeah, that kind of helped us build rules and ground the world of Luki a little bit to figure out what kind of artwork would they create, what would their what does Luki eat for breakfast, what's his toast made out of, that sort of stuff.
wow. I love that because, well, let me ask you this about Sasha and Enyo. What did they think of the finished film?
I I will say I don't think that they, if we could go back, I don't know if they would be ready for the ride that they went on with us, just because a lot of times when we work with clients that want to tell a story that's never been done before. So typically that comes with clients that have no idea about animation. For Sasha and Anyo, they didn't know the ins and outs. So my producer Adrian and I just kind of held their hand as we led them up the mountain, if you will, along the way. So there was a ton of ups and downs, setbacks and that sort of fun stuff. But in the very end, I know that they were both very proud and they loved the look of it. They loved how it all, turned out. And I think to maybe they're surprised, probably better than they expected.
Yeah, I would have been. Yeah, I would have been blown away. I mean, with this incredible work, and I have to ask because this film is so good. Is there going to be a series of children's books based on it?
That's a great question. I really hope so. The We've pitched it around at a couple of conferences where I do think, say PBS picks it up. I think PBS would be great, or Apple or somebody. There could be a whole series on this. We could pick up with Luki, years before, and then we can follow the diagnosis, right? And there could be other robots with other diseases that we're kind of highlighting and things like that. Uh, so there could be a lot explored there. But most importantly, right now, with the help of Global Neuro Y Care, for the first time ever, there's an activity book for children and families to use and to kind of go through this process of understanding their own emotions, kind of understanding, the diagnosis process and things like that. And Luki is there to kind of help the kids along the way. And I could easily see, Global Neuro Y Care and the ALS Association making more material, for families that would easily, translate and people would love, I think.
How did you how did you connect to Global Neuro Y Care?
Yeah, so Dr. Melinda Kavanoff was our expert medical advisor on the film. She was actually contacted, I think, just a couple of weeks before we were, in probably February of 2021, from Sasha and Anyo. And, you know, the this whole idea for them was realizing there was literally no material in the world for explaining this to children, except for there was some material that was just started by Dr. Melinda Kavanoff and the great work that she was doing. And she primarily focuses with families and working with children that have to, go through this process of seeing a loved one, become bedridden, or kids become caretakers and things like that, and what that does to them and psychologically, and how they grow up with a family member and stuff like that. So she had written some documents and created this little comic book, but it wasn't readily available in the Netherlands. But they were able to find her and then asked if she would be interested in consulting. And at the time, she was like, "Oh yeah, she gets asked for a lot to do a lot of stuff," but she's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure." But the Bigrin team, we just kind of kept, picking, Melinda's brain and asking her questions and just making sure that as much as possible we were as medically accurate as can be. And that was something that Anyo specifically was very adamant about when we first met with him. He was like, "Look, to do this film, we've raised some money. We want to make an 18-minute, Pixar level short film, and it's got to be educational. It's got to be medically accurate. It has to be no known language. It has to be worldwide appeal, and you need to make sure it's entertaining." And the very last thing he wanted was it had to be Oscar worthy. And I laughed at all that. And I was like, "Wow, this is like, these are big demands. This is a big ask." And I said, "Look, we can do all the things except for the Oscar stuff, because I don't know a single person, filmmaker, that just like, oh yeah, I'm going to make an Oscar film this year." It's not possible. I was like, but if we do all the other things right, and if we're lucky, maybe it'll resonate with audiences and the community, and we'll see what happens from there. So uh, back to Melinda, we made sure to work with her, and then I just did extensive research and just read a lot of material online and looked at interviews and things like that.
Yeah, it's yeah, when we think of Oscar level, there's a mindset for that, but then there's the reality. Then
Yeah.
there's the reality of it. And it was funny because when I was doing the interview on 95 Senses for the last Oscars,
It's a beautiful
and
film.
it was so funny because he said the only goal was just to get qualified. If we got
Oh,
qualified, we met the goal. We're good. Great. If whatever happens after that, cool too. But we at least we got to that level. And
yeah.
but here's a film, oh man, that literally just not only raises the bar, it should scare the hell out of everybody else because this film is so great. I mean, and like you covered all the points. It's entertaining to watch. You can't pick a better character than a robot because ALS is a nerve electrical transmission problem.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of people need to understand that with ALS, the body may stop, but the mind never does. So the mind becomes trapped in a body that doesn't move. So a lot of these people they learn to talk through a computer, and
Mhm.
and that's how they communicate. Some, we know that life expectancy is usually 5 years. I know people who have made it to the 12 to 15 year mark.
Yeah.
And but this is a film that checks off every single box and then some. Now, you have already won multiple awards, but more importantly, what has been the audience's reaction to the film, and what questions are you most asked about?
Yeah, thank you for all of that. We've been very fortunate on the festival circuit with this film. It's definitely resonated with the audiences, and we've primarily have won. Most of our winnings have come from the audience award, and a handful of them are from the audience being just children. So at Anamayo, this great film festival in the Canary Islands, that we won that division, I guess, by the children voting there, in Cleveland and other festivals. So it's like the kids get it, they understand it, and there was early kind of conversations around, and there's this always happens with animation where I feel certain films or series and things like that where they might kind of dumb things down for children because it might be too intense or it's too scary and things like that. But honestly, like, kids get this stuff. They're just little people that that are just very curious. They have lots of questions and can handle a lot more than I think that we realize. And we've been seeing that at the festivals where they ask really fun questions of about the light and understanding, like, oh, it's the wires that are not working properly. And of course they get sad, but they understand why. Luki's friends are sad as well, but they understand, like, they can still honor their friend and take that light, if you will, with them moving forward. And then the audience for the ALS community has been incredibly well received as well, because now, for the like I said earlier, the first time ever, that community has something to go to watch together, to have education materials to go through together, whereas there's been nothing done before that. And then outside of that, a bit of a surprise, and kind of a heartwarming thing for me was, amongst all of Anyo's demands, part of what my responsibility as a filmmaker is, I wanted to make sure that there was moments in the film that would allow anybody that wasn't associated directly with ALS to connect. So making sure that we had the moments with the friends becoming the caretakers for Luki. So I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I lost my mom to cancer and I was her caregiver for the last year and a half or whatever. And these moments in the film really done beautifully resonated with me, and I was able to connect with this moment, or uh, different parts of the film in that way. So that's been a bit of a surprise to see people connect in different ways.
Yeah, everybody who sees this film is going to connect to Lukey and the Lights.
Look, if they
And
don't, they need to look inward and reflect on some emotions, maybe.
indeed, indeed. And I mean, I've had the opportunity to watch a lot of animated shorts, and there's a lot of good ones out there.
Oh yeah,
But when it comes to checking off all of the boxes and one that is used as a teaching tool, Lukey and the Lights. Wow, what a film.
thank you.
And and I can see too, this is a film, and who knows what may come from this film is really going to have a lot of longevity of providing information and education to the ALS community and those that are going to find themselves in some
Right,
cases being a part of that community, and Lukey is going to be there to kind of guide
right.
them from the beginning and through the journey. And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you this: Lukey and the Lights. This is an animated short film, a 3D. Let's put it on there. It's a 3D animated short film with a message. It's a teaching tool to explain to children whose parent or friend has ALS and what it does and what it means if someone has this disease. Now, Lukey and the Lights shares a charming and touching story of a robot named Lukey who is slowly starting to malfunction. But even with the struggles ahead, Lukey demonstrates unwavering resilience, painting a vivid portrait of what it means to truly live and the power to find light even in the darkest of times. This poignant animated short was made to raise awareness of ALS as well as to create a platform for children to understand what the disease is. And this film alone is going to teach adults what this disease is. And it absolutely deserves to be qualified for the 2025 Academy Awards. Again, this story follows an active, charming, and upbeat robot named Lukey who enjoys, well, hanging with all of his friends. But then one day after work, while playing soccer, Lukey's arm begins to malfunction. And then after a trip to the doctor, Lukey is diagnosed with ALS. But cinematically, the 3D animation is again off the charts fantastic, and your eyes just want to absorb every minute detail in the animation. The movements are so fluid, the colors are incredible, and more importantly, it brings the explanation of ALS to both children and adults with ease. I mean, Toby's brilliance comes through by mimicking the exact movements or the lack thereof in those experiencing the beginning stages of ALS as well as the later stages of the disease. So, ALS is still a misunderstood condition and one in which we still don't know what the cause is. But it can strike people in their prime of their life, even affecting those in their senior years. So, for more information, go to globalneuroycare.org for more information, as well as check out als.org as well. And again, Lukey and the Lights is Oscar qualified and one film I'm keeping my eye on when the shortlist is announced. And Toby, I want to thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing the inside and the insights of this film with us today. And again, there are not enough glorious adjectives to give praise about how incredible this film is.
Thank you so much for having me here and letting me share a little bit about Luki's journey and the story behind it.
Oh, you are absolutely welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, I will say this. If you are the type that loves attending film festivals, and if there's a major film festival in your area or coming soon, and Lukey and the Lights is going to make an appearance at that festival, you need to make sure that you are seated in that theater and you're going to be blown away and amazed and mesmerized just like I was. So, as for me, ladies and gentlemen, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.